You've written a book called The Safety Trap, and I wanted to have you on because I think it's really important that people understand. I mean, Spencer, we have had an incredible time. You know that we still have great security. We've had a home invasion. We have had a IT attack on us. We've had all kinds of stuff happen to us, and you know us. We're really prepared and really secure. But I think that goes to what you're talking about, called the safety trap.
Well, I can't agree with you more. I mean, as seriously as you take your security, I take my own security very seriously.
Yeah.
And I had an attempted home invasion in my house on Monday.
Really?
1:00 in the morning.
It's a terrible idea. You don't invade Spencer's house.
Wrong house. Wrong house.
I know.
But went to bed around midnight, 1:10 a.m. I have a service dog. Just goes from 0 to hero. And I look over and I see that my motion lights are turned on outside. My alert notifications on my security system are going into overdrive. Ronan is just like begging me to let him through the door. I check the security feed. I see that there's a bad guy trying to get in through my back fence. I let Ronan out the back. I grabbed the shotgun and go out the front. And I was like 5 seconds too slow. And the guy got away. But made a report. They wound up catching the guy about a half a mile down the road.
Because he was trying to break into other houses on your street, too,
Yeah,
right?
so the next morning, of course, all the neighbors start talking. And he had attempted to get into the apartment complex, which is to the left of me, hit my house, hit the house next to me, hit their neighbor's house. And we all just, I got immediately on the phone right after I cleared the property. It was like 5'10", gray shorts, black shirt, tan cap, red backpack. And he had obviously known what security, like I always talk about how you want to just present yourself as having a strong protective posture, to sort of make that a deterrent factor, which is the first level of deterrence.
And some people take that as just putting the sign in their yard with nothing else.
And the problem with that is that 85% of home invasions is because the guy can just walk through the front door because it's unlocked. And on the security cameras, you see the brazenness of this. He knows that I have the lights, and so he puts his arm up to cover his face, but has no problem just trying the front door to see if he can just walk right in.
Jeez. Wow. Wow.
Drug-seeking behavior, was looking to raid a medicine. And that's the thing. You have to be really careful because people who come during the day are typically coming for your stuff, but people who come at night, good chance they're coming for you. So you really need to be of the mindset that you're willing to participate in your own protection.
That's the one thing that I learned from you and others is that robbers don't want to meet you just as much as you don't want to meet them. They come when the house is empty. They don't do it at night like you see in the movies. Generally speaking, they do it during the day. Somebody comes to your house at night, they got a problem. They're either a drug person that's desperate, or they do want to harm you, or they're doing something more than stealing your stuff, generally speaking.
Right. Of course, there's always exceptions to every rule, but yeah, more often than not. And especially when they don't come through the front door, which I think this guy was trying to do is by coming in through the back, is if your neighbors hear one loud crash, they're probably going to go, oh, well, that was strange. But if they hear a second loud crash, then they may investigate. But if your front door is open, or if it's a weak door that they can just get in with one quick kick, or just one break of a window, you cannot expect your neighbors to be willing to protect you any more than you are overly willing to protect your neighbors. Yes, we all have a neighborly responsibility to look out for one another, but we no longer live in a world where we can simply hope that nothing will happen and then solely rely on the first responders to save us once something does.
That is something that came actually out of the Carter administration. He's the one that started calling police and fire first responders. We never thought of it that way. Up until Carter, we all believed we were the first responders.
Yes.
And that change alone has changed our society. So talk to me about the paradox of the safety trap.
So the
What
safety
is the
trap.
safety trap?
The safety trap is a turn of phrase that I came up with a few years ago to explain to my clients the false sense of security that tends to hide behind our own outlook when our fear has been abated, but risk remains. So if we take a school shooting, for example, tragic event happens, there's this rush that we have to do something. The politicians, say we're going to ban guns, and public safety officials say we need to do something about mental health. But then, nothing really happens. The news cycle moves on. The fear has abated, but the risk is still there. We have done absolutely nothing to, maybe we'll do some things that will help to mitigate that risk once it has been realized. But we don't do anything, we don't put any kind of like preventative countermeasures in place to prevent that bad thing from happening. And that is the very essence of the safety trap. We are sometimes the most at danger when we feel the most safe, because when we have just a little bit of fear, or when we're a little bit hesitant, or we're a little bit aware, we have our guard up, we're looking around, we're present, we're very much in the moment. But then, things go on, nothing else happens, and we have this swinging of the pendulum between hypercomplacency and vigilance. And everyday safety is really about finding that happy middle, a healthy sense of skepticism, a moderate dose of vigilance. Very simple strategy.
I have a story that probably very few can relate to, but I tell it for a reason, because you don't appreciate the skills that you actually have, these warning signals, these things in you that you will see without recognizing that you're not consciously looking or listening for things. You just notice things, and that gives you that sense of, I should be a little hesitant. When you were the head of my detail, I had gotten so used to, and I think we may have talked about this, I got so used to always, 24/7, having protection with me. And usually it was more than one guy. In the bad times, it was a lot of people. And so I just knew that I was safe no matter where I was, or at least I felt that way. And I lost those skills. And I remember distinctly, maybe 10 years ago, the first time I went out again, just by myself, just to go to the store, Spencer, I was so freaked out because I didn't have that natural ability anymore. I mean, it came back, but it was so foreign to me. I was paranoid about everything. It's this weird balance of still sensing the danger, but not living in fear. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely does make sense. And I think this is a very similar frame. And I cite a couple examples in the book. The way I structured the book was I identified these like 16 quote unquote safety traps that all of my clients throughout the years kept falling into, whether that be complacency, whether that be avoidance, whether that be false equivalence. And what it really always comes down to is everything in our normal everyday life. Like most of us are never going to experience a terror attack or be in an active shooter situation or experience a home invasion or any other like horrific incident. But that doesn't mean that the risks aren't real. One of the things my global experience has always shown me is that there are always pre-incident indicators. There are always warning signs that come before the bad thing happens. And staying safe is about training ourselves to see them. When we drive our cars, we are looking for the person who's flying up behind us. We're looking for the person who's erratically changing lanes. We're looking for the person that in leadership, they always talk about like anticipating the needs of others. Safety is about anticipating the idiocy of others. Is this person going to and if we could just like apply those same safety defense strategies that we employ when we're driving to our everyday life, we would have that ability to notice, hey, this person, even when I was on your security detail and we had all of the advanced teams and the overwatch and the counter surveillance and everything, you would still very often come up to me and be like, something just doesn't feel right about this route.
Yes.
And all of that, and we would absolutely take that into our route planning or our threat matrix or whatever, because you not negotiating against your own survival instincts allowed us to keep you safe.
Yeah. Spencer, I thank you for all of the years of service that you gave my family and kept us safe in some really terribly frightening situations at times. Thank you for that. I want to come back because I want to ask you some questions because the world has changed. And you talk about, in the book, don't necessarily go where everybody tells you to go. And that is advice that my uncle, who used to do civil defense research back in the 60s and 50s with nuclear stuff, that's the first thing he said to me when I moved to New York City. If anything happens, don't gather where they tell you to gather. And I want you to kind of explain, because the world has changed so much, how do we prepare for things that could happen in the future? So the two things, Spencer, I want to talk to you about is why is it, in the book, you answer the question, why is it so many emergency response plans do more harm than good, and why is run, hide, fight such a bad idea? Those are both things that we're told we have to pay attention to, and you're saying, nuh-uh, bad ideas.
Horrible ideas. Okay, so on the evacuation protocols, why you don't want to go where everyone else is going.
Okay.
Let's say that one of the reasons, let's just accept the premise that everyone who calls in a bomb threat, there's no bomb. Because to get the components for that bomb, to build it, to construct it, to then breach security, to get it in place, why are you going to sabotage your success? But what you do have readily available is, where is that evacuation zone?
Yeah.
Right? And that's typically outside of the security zone. So I can put it, and I can put in hashtag fire drill or hashtag bomb threat, and I can see on social media where everyone's gathering points are. I can very easily put an explosive device there. Now, if there is a real, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say this. I think they did this in Beslin, if you remember that.
There's a movie called The Kingdom, where they put a small diversionary explosive device inside a building to get everyone to the evacuation point, and then that's where the real bomb goes off. Because schools, buildings, office places are all these like interconnected, compartmentalized pockets of protection, and then you give all of those up to all move to one centralized collective. Well, we're all going to go to the parking lot. We're all going to go to the bleachers. Horrible idea. Right. If there's ever a fire drill or an evacuation drone, or even if it's just a rehearsal, go anywhere else than where they're telling you to go. Go to Starbucks. Go home. If the crisis is so severe that they had to stop what they were doing and get everyone out, they have bigger problems than getting you back in. Go, just participate in your own protection, be disagreeable, and go away. And this gets us to the run, hide, fight thing. The run, hide,
fight. Hang on, because I've got about 30 seconds here, and I don't want to cut you off on this, because I think this is important with, the number of shooters that we have had, the murderers that come in, and we had another shooting, I think, on an Air Force base, or I think it was at Fort Bragg this weekend. I'm not sure. And run, hide, fight is what everybody preaches. Spencer says that's not the right way to go. Just before the break, we were talking about the idea of run, hide, fight. Yes. And you say that's a bad idea. Why?
It is a horrible idea. So the original premise of run, hide, fight was what they taught pilots in SEER school. So survive, evade, resist, escape. Pilot gets captured by taken POW, he gets the chance to escape. He's going to run as far away from the enemy as he can. If he gets too tired or is injured, he's going to hide until he can get his strength back. And then if he's going to start running again, and if the enemy should catch up to him, he's going to fight that enemy like his life depends on it, because it absolutely will. Mm-hmm. So then you have Sandy Hook, you have Columbine, you have all of these tragedies, and this cottage industry starts coming up of run, hide, fight, which is great on an individual level, but is a horrible protocol for a collective, because what it has now been reduced to is run to your hiding spot. And anyone who's ever played t-ball or has played baseball, which is harder to hit? The ball that is coming across the plate at 90 miles an hour, or the ball that is sitting stationary on a tee? It is.
I would say both equally for me. Both equally. But
athleticism being a constant. But in standard safety, if the threat is inside your house, you want to get outside the house. If the threat is outside your house, you want to barricade yourself inside the house. what has happened is that there's this wide divide between survivability and accountability. If someone was to break in here right now, I would try to take that guy down while all of you got as far away from here as possible, because the hardest thing to hit is someone that is increasing time and distance, putting as many steps between you and the bad guy as possible, and getting farther and farther away with each step you take. Schools have just basically schools and police aligned authors of these security programs want everyone to be compartmentalized, want everyone to be contained, because now they're containing the threat. A lot of people have this misconception that the police are there for your personal safety. They're not. They're there for the public's safety. And in the interest of the collective safety, keeping that threat contained is better for them, because now we don't have to worry about where else he's going. So I always urge clients, families, teachers, parents, students, if you ever are in a situation where there is a known threat inside the building, get outside that building as quickly as you possibly can.
But this is different because you were the one who designed my first safe room when we had to have one in Connecticut.
Yes.
And the idea was get all of the children in there and stay in there. So it's different if you're talking about, you have some sort of a safe room where nobody can get in, at least for
residential security, where that was one small part of an overarching, very comprehensive security program.
Yes.
You know what I mean? We had multiple levels of concentric rings of security, from the outerness of the property to the immediate access to the compound, to the driveway, to the house, to inside the front door, and then more so inside. So if it got to the point where multiple things were breached and all of us were dead, the safest place for your family to be was in that safe room until the police could get there. We were buying you the time for a police response.
Right.
That is completely different from a school or a movie theater or a mall or a shopping center, which may have all of those false senses of security, because you see the cameras and you see the guard and you see all the domes up in the ceiling. But all of those things are there to protect the products. They are not there to protect you. So if you are in a situation where your life is on the line, you are your own authority. And I will tell you right now, if it's a matter of life and death, is not a game of hide and seek. You would not hide from a fire in a building and hope the fire doesn't find you. But an active shooter is just as unpredictable and just as violent as a fire. So would you hide from a fire or would you run? I recommend you run.
So that is first, because it is, it's hide. What is it? Hide,
run, hide, fight.
Run, hide, fight.
But your point, your distinction here is you're not running to a place to hide, which is how it's being interpreted.
Correct.
You don't want to run to a place to hide. You want to run, get the hell out of there, no matter what. You want to run.
Yeah, I would love to see schools put. I would much rather schools invest in threat management programs and start helping those who are hurting, and especially now with so schools have finite budgets, okay, and so that means that
not now.
We'll see.
But all of the money that typically would go to security programs has now been shifted to COVID protocols.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so none of that money is going to counseling. None of that money is going to mental health. And one of the reasons we're seeing such a rise in active shooter engagements and domestic violence and child abuse is because one of the after effects of a year long spent in this pandemic is isolation. Has been solitude, and that has had a catastrophic impact on those with mental illness. And I'm not talking about, people like me who are in therapy. I'm talking about those who have serious mental illness.
Whoa. Wait, you're in therapy?
Oh, I've been in therapy for a better part of 6 months now. It's been great.
How do you feel about that?
Love it.
Tell me about your mom. What
happened?
Well,
I was born at an early age.
Okay. So wait a minute. Are you? I don't want to use the word predicting, but are you warning that we may have more shootings?
What I am saying is that if you are expecting your school to be able to save your child, you are putting your child more at risk. My parents were both teachers. They were brilliant educators. They were not trained protectors. I am. And I'm telling you right now, when you go to a movie theater or you go to a ball game and that you see the guy in the security windbreak and you ask him where your seat is and he says it's over there, you can trust that. But would you trust that same person in a mass casualty event?
No.
Exactly.
You taught me one thing, and I thought it was really fascinating because, at first you guys couldn't carry guns in New York.
Not in New York City, right?
In New York City, they no guns, and they do it for a reason. They're doing it for the pension of the police officers. Yes. And if you hire a police officer, then you have a gun. And you'd never wanted to do that, and you said because it's the opposite kind of training. Do you remember this?
Completely different.
It kind of relates to this,
yes,
as what you're saying.
Yes.
Go ahead.
First off, so when I was in the Army, I was an assaulter. I was a shooter. It was my job to initiate a violence of action on a known target for God and country. As a protector, my job is to cover and evacuate my principal off the X. So if I have time to draw, aim, and fire, I have time to cover and evacuate you. My job is not to be in a gunfight. When you saw Ronald Reagan coming out of the Hinckley Hilton, mm-hmm, and John Hinckley shot him and he got off 6 shots, how many shots did the Secret Service get off? 0. Because their job was to protect the president, to put themselves between a bullet and a target and get that president to safety. Firearms are on a list of protective. Now, a firearm would be different for, say, like a home invasion, where it's a known target and you have assets in place where you can see, mm-hmm, how they're coming in, like I did on Monday. But the number one argument against using a handgun for self-defense is to watch the everyday citizen try to take a selfie of a celebrity using their cell phone.
It's a great point.
Okay? They're like, oh my gosh, Mr. Beck.
Right, yeah.
Okay? Now, the average person can take a photo of their breakfast with photographic expertise that'd be worthy of framing in the MoMA. But, have Taylor Swift walk into the room and be like, Now, imagine that's a handgun. And tell me that person can do the same thing.
The police are more like the military. They are to go in and get the guy.
The job of the police is to police.
Yeah,
public
they're not
safety.
there, right, to evacuate the kids. I mean, they will help with that, et cetera, but their primary job in those situations is to get the bad guy.
Yeah.
Where a defender is someone who says, get out, get away from the bad guy.
Yeah. And watch any crime TV show. What's the first thing you hear the detectives talking about is how much they're yelling at the cops in uniform not to mess things up. Like, your job is to secure the scene. Then the detectives will come in and interpret what's what and what's relevant and who can go and who needs to stay and who needs to be interviewed. They're the ones that solve the case. But to expect, and don't get me wrong, I am not knocking police officers. I love the police. I am a supporter of the police. I am very pro-police. But I would not expect, my local firemen to change my oil. It's not their job. You would not. Yeah. And therefore, you can't expect.
It's just different training.
It's completely different training.
Just different training. Spencer, thank you so much.
Sir, this was a true pleasure. Thank you.
I will tell you that we talk about you often. Still, after these years, the children remember you fondly. You were a great impact on their life and a real impact on mine. And I appreciate everything you did.
Thank you.
Thank you. Spencer Coursen, he's the author of the book, The Safety Trap. You can pick it up anywhere. The Safety Trap. Get it now.